Indian companies are buying Israeli businesses at a shockingly quick rate, and nobody seems to know why. After all, it would seem to an outside observer that investing in Israeli companies would be a bad idea right now. The country's engaged in a brutal war with Hamas and has been since early October 2023, with the likelihood being that this war will extend to Lebanon should Israel prove successful in Gaza. Given the tumultuous nature of the war and negative impact on business, it would seem like no country would want to invest in Israeli businesses right now, much less India. In the past, India has always played an active role in supporting Palestine and arguing that the region should become a free country, with its people having the right to self-determination. India's own Ministry of External Affairs said as much in 2019, pointing out that India had voted in favor of this right during the 53rd session held by the United Nations General Assembly. Surely India would be one of the last countries Israel would sell to, given that backdrop. And yet, not only are we seeing an increasing number of Israeli businesses being bought by Indian companies, but there are very clear political reasons for those buyouts taking place. So why is Israel selling some of its largest companies to India? We'll cover some of the reasons shortly. First, it's worth looking at a few examples of these major business purchases, starting with Hiap Port. Hiap Port is one of the 3 major Israeli seaports, and it's easily the largest of the trio. The port employs more than 1,000 people and is responsible for ensuring that 30 million tons of cargo gets to where it needs to go every year. It's also a major cruise ship destination, with the port's website calling it Israel's cruise terminal. During peak cruise season, the number of people working at the port increases to 5,000 to account for huge demand. In short, Hiap Port is a valuable business asset. But in July 2022, Israel chose to sell the port for $1.2 billion to 2 buyers. One of those companies, Gadot Group, is an Israeli logistics and chemicals company. The other winning bidder was Adani Ports, a private Indian company that'll hold a 70% stake in Hiap Port in comparison to Gadot's 30% stake. The purchase came on the back of a 2-year tender period, with Adani Group's chairman, Gautam Adani, claiming that the deal represented immense strategic and historical significance for both nations in a post on X. But why would Israel sell this previously publicly owned port in the first place? The country's finance minister, Avigdor Lieberman, offers some practical reasons when he says that privatizing the port will lower the cost of living throughout Israel while providing some much-needed competition for Israel's other 2 publicly owned ports. On Adani's part, the purchase is in aid of furthering its position as India's largest transport utility, and it'll be a large part of its expansion efforts in the coming years. This is far from the only deal involving Israel and India. Way back in 2007, the Indian pharmaceutical company Sun Pharma tabled a bid to purchase an Israeli company, Taro Pharmaceutical. So began a protracted courtship, with Taro seemingly holding out, perhaps for a better offer. In the years since, Sun Pharma has slowly been buying up Taro stock, bringing us back to 2023. By May of that year, Sun Pharma already owned 78.5% of Taro, essentially making it a subsidiary. It tabled the $307 million bid for the remaining 21.5%, amounting to $38 per share, and entered more negotiations. The bid eventually rose to $43 per share by December 2023, with Taro agreeing on the deal in principle. As part of the purchase, Sun Pharma gets its hands on assets valued at $1.3 billion and achieves a clear route into North America, given that Taro did $573 million worth of business with the US and Canada during the 2023 fiscal year. Odds are good Sun Pharma will take Taro private, eliminating the possibility of any company getting a share of its profits now that the buyout is complete. There's more. Panaya is a technology company based in Hod HaSharon that offers change intelligence services powered by AI. That made it attractive to Infosys, an Indian company, back in 2015, with Infosys tabling a bid of around $200 million to acquire Panaya. The bid was successful, with Infosys press release claiming that the purchase would allow it to deliver Panaya's automation to several of its own service models. For his part, the Panaya CEO at the time, Doron Gerstel, expressed excitement about the buyout when he said that it would give Panaya access to a global customer base. So a match made in heaven, it seems, and one that has clear business justification on both sides. And yet, it is still strange that Panaya would allow an Indian company to purchase it, especially given that India's support for an autonomous Palestine was as strong as ever in 2015. Coming back to the present day, we have one more example before we dig into why all of these purchases are happening. Tower Semiconductor. In October 2023, Business Today reported that India's Reliance Group, which operates in the oil and telecom sectors, was planning to prepare a bid to purchase Tower Semiconductor. The news came a year and a half after Intel had pulled out of a $5.4 billion deal to buy the Israeli semiconductor manufacturer. Some commentators speculated that Reliance sees the acquisition as a means to future-proof its business by gaining the ability to manufacture its own semiconductors. This deal did not materialize out of thin air. Though Intel pulling out of its previous bid was fortuitous for Reliance Group, the truth is that Tower Semiconductor had made repeated overtures to India to help the nation build its own semiconductor ecosystem. For instance, Tower was part of a consortium between 2013 and 2014 led by the JP Group that would have seen it team up with IBM to become a technology partner to India. A similar offer to become a technology partner, this time with ISMC, and made under India's Semiconductor Incentive Scheme in February 2022, also failed. It seems that Tower Semiconductor has been trying to get involved with India for almost a decade, and if the proposed purchase by Reliance Group goes through, it'll likely become a major player in India's semiconductor market for years to come, albeit one that won't be operating independently. Take each of these 4 deals as standalones, and you can easily find business-related reasons for them happening. The Hiap Port purchase serves the goal of furthering Adani Port's expansion. Sun Pharma bought Taro to give it a clearer route into the American market, with Infosys purchasing Panaya to enable it to offer automation throughout its product range. As for Reliance Group's anticipated purchase of Tower Semiconductors, it's obvious that bringing a semiconductor manufacturer in-house will be of huge benefit to Reliance. But it's in semiconductors that we can start to see some of the deeper reasons behind all these Indian purchases of large Israeli businesses. To understand why, let's take a quick trip to Taiwan. Taiwan's the world's largest manufacturer of semiconductors. These little chips are vital to the modern world, as they're practically in every computerized device we use, with Taiwan being responsible for the production of around 60% of the world's supply. Shift your focus over to more advanced semiconductors, such as those used in military equipment, and Taiwan handles 90% of production. Why does that matter? Is India trying to achieve semiconductor-based independence from Taiwan? No, not from Taiwan, from China. The likelihood of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is growing ever stronger, with Xi Jinping's constant rhetoric about how Taiwan should be a part of China slowly transforming from words into action. Beijing is currently beefing up several of the air bases it has stationed on the Chinese coast facing Taiwan. The end of 2023 saw repeated military operations conducted by Chinese troops in the Taiwan Strait. Those operations, supposedly to help Chinese troops get combat ready, saw Beijing flirt with the Davis Line, crossing it on several occasions. That line's important because, though unofficial, it's generally considered a border between China and Taiwan. China is clearly gearing up for something, and the odds are high that it's going to invade Taiwan at some point in the next 3 years, conducting a smash-and-grab operation that would see it seize the island nation and claim it as Chinese territory. It has to happen in the next few years because China has a military advantage over Taiwan right now. Waiting any longer gives Taiwan more time to prepare and, crucially, enables the United States to provide a stronger base of operations near the Taiwan Strait to keep an eye on China. Of course, huge swaths of the international community would be up in arms, some quite literally if China were to launch an invasion of Taiwan. But let's assume China is successful. It annexes Taiwan and claims the businesses within the island as its own. Suddenly, China controls over 60% of the world's semiconductor production. That's bad news for India. Though India and China are loosely allied economically, India doesn't want to see China gaining such a strong control of a vital industry. New Delhi would become beholden to Beijing for its supply of semiconductors, with China having the option to cut that supply off at any point. If you don't think that's a possibility, consider what happened with the BRICS alliance in 2023. For around a decade, the BRICS has been a loose economic alliance of 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The idea behind the group is that each member nation works toward economic policies that benefit all 5, with these policies and the cooperation that comes from them reducing each member nation's reliance on Western power structures. All that sounds great for India and would suggest it's allied with China through the BRICS group. But in August 2023, BRICS added 6 new members, including Iran, Argentina, Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. What seems like a strengthening of the group from the outside looking in could actually spell bad news for India. Not only are several of these new members, especially Iran, distinctly anti-West, which clashes with India's more neutral approach, but adding so many new members diminished India's voice within BRICS. China's voice, on the other hand, grows ever stronger, not least because it's clearly the most powerful economic nation within the group. More cynical commentators might claim that China's trying to finesse India out of BRICS. According to the Atlantic Council, these two countries were at odds about expansion right up until it was announced. Now India faces a situation where the 6 new members will be officially welcomed into the group in January 2024, potentially leaving New Delhi in a difficult position should it need to negotiate with China over semiconductors in the wake of an invasion of Taiwan. In this light, the purchase of Tower Semiconductors by Reliance Group takes on a whole new meaning. Granted, Reliance Group isn't a publicly held company. Technically, the Indian government has no say in what the group does outside of ensuring the company adheres to Indian laws. That means it couldn't force Reliance Group to produce semiconductors via Tower solely for India. But it's much easier to negotiate deals with a friendly company at home than it is to negotiate them with potentially hostile countries that are actively making moves to diminish your presence in Asian geopolitics. And it doesn't hurt that allowing deals with this one to go through enhances India and Israel's cooperative efforts. That brings us to our second reason why so many Indian companies are buying Israeli companies. It deepens the ties between the two countries. Despite India's long-held support for a free Palestine, Israel and India have been friendly for a long time. It wasn't always that way. Though India formally recognized Israel's legitimacy as a nation in 1950, New Delhi was standoffish for much of the latter half of the 20th century. It was also a big supporter of Palestine, becoming the first to recognize the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLA, as the sole representative of Palestinian people back in 1974. But a lot has changed over the last 30 years. After granting Israel full diplomatic recognition in 1992, marked by the opening of the Israeli embassy in New Delhi, the frost between India and Israel started to melt. That frost all but disappeared in 1999 during India's war with Pakistan over the disputed Kashmir territory, with Israel proving itself willing to supply ammunition and military equipment to support the Indian war effort. According to Time magazine, India now buys about $2 billion worth of weapons from Israel every year, making it Israel's largest customer for its defense industry. The election of Narendra Modi as Indian Prime Minister in 2014 brought Indian and Israeli cooperation out to the open. In 2017, Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu returning the favor a year later with a visit to India. Ideologically, the two leaders share a lot of ground, with Time even claiming that Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party considers Israel as the perfect model for forming a religious national state for them to follow. Of course, India still had to keep up appearances to other Arab Gulf leaders. Modi also visited the West Bank in 2018, the same year that Netanyahu visited India, and New Delhi made extensive donations to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East in the 5 years leading up to 2023. But in the wake of the Hamas attack on Israel, India has taken a decidedly pro-Israel stance. It was one of the few countries that decided to abstain from a United Nations resolution calling for a humanitarian truce between Israel and Palestine on October 27, 2023, despite 120 other countries signing the resolution. Plus, Modi was one of the first world leaders to condemn Hamas's actions as a terrorist attack in the House following October 7th attacks, pledging that India would stand in solidarity with Israel at this difficult hour. So it's clear that a commercial and militaristic tie between India and Israel exists, opening the door for Indian companies to buy Israeli ones in the process. But the question still remains: why? After all, India wishes to maintain its position as a strong voice in Asia, particularly the southern part of the continent. But such strong support for Israel seems to run counter to the approach that many other Asian countries are taking to the war, potentially harming India on the geopolitical scale. But it's in geopolitics that we find an answer. By aligning itself with Israel, India also aligns itself with several Western powers, particularly the United States, by proxy. This could be seen as a direct response to China's ambitions for Asia. The impending invasion of Taiwan, the expansion of BRICS, and even China's Belt and Road Initiative, which sees China lending money to other countries for infrastructural projects, all present threats to India. New Delhi might be looking at all the moves China is making and could consider its increasing cooperation with Israel a counter. After all, it's not just Indian businesses buying Israeli ones that signal cooperation. In May 2023, the two countries announced the signing of an agreement between India's Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, or CSIR, and Israel's Directorate of Defense Research and Development, DDR&D, to work together in high-technology areas. Semiconductors were specifically named in that agreement. Remember how China's threat to Taiwan affects those important chips, as were synthetic biology and artificial intelligence. That mention of AI should bring the Panaya acquisition of Infosys back to your mind. While that purchase has commercial purposes, it, along with a new agreement between Israel and India, shows that both nations recognize that geopolitics of the future will focus as much on technology as they do on negotiations. Those who control, or at least provide, the tech that powers the world will have a say in how the world is run. Israel plays host to Tel Aviv, ranked the 5th best global tech ecosystem in the world by Startup Genome in 2023, making it a hotbed of high-tech activity. India sees an opportunity there to establish itself as a major player in the emerging AI field, giving itself a stronger voice in an increasingly tech-centric world in the process. So, India's purchase of so many major Israeli businesses may be a symptom of the increasing collaboration we're seeing between the two nations. You might even argue that this collaboration is intended to shift the power dynamics within Asian geopolitics, with India leveraging its relationship with Israel to curry favor in the West as it prepares for increasing Chinese influence that may come from an invasion of Taiwan. But there's another reason why Indian businesses are buying Israeli companies: the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. In September 2023, 7 countries announced their intent to form the IMEC. India was clearly among them, as noted in the name, but so too are France, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Italy, the United Arab Emirates, and the European Union, or EU, as a whole. The IMEC is an ambitious plan to create 2 corridors for trade, one connecting India to the Gulf region, with a second connecting the Gulf to Europe. That'll facilitate the strengthening of commercial links between all the nations involved. The project includes the establishment of new rail links, along with pipelines for exporting hydrogen and an array of data and electrical cables. There's also talk of a new ship-to-rail network running along the corridor that'll supplement the existing maritime routes that exist between each IMEC participant. It's a massive infrastructural undertaking. Much like India's increasing collaboration with Israel, which could be seen as preparation for China gaining more leverage in Asia through an invasion of Taiwan, the IMEC could be considered a response to China's Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI. In fact, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace argues that the United States is actively pushing for the establishment of IMEC for this very reason. Oh, and it's also worth noting that the IMEC will connect Jordan and Israel, despite neither country being an official signer of the agreement to create the corridor. Though the project is currently on hold due to obvious geopolitical tensions caused by Israel's war against Hamas, it appears, at least on the surface, to be a crucial trade route. It's telling that the IMEC attempts to cut China out entirely, perhaps sending a message that none of the nations involved necessarily need to rely on Beijing for trade. But even with the corridor in place, China will still have some influence. After all, IMEC is supposed to connect Hiap Port, now owned by an Indian company, to Piraeus in Greece. Piraeus is Eastern Europe's largest port. Its majority shareholder is the Chinese shipping company COSCO. So we're seeing a game of tit for tat starting to emerge here. Through the creation of IMEC, India is attempting to counter the increasing Chinese influence created by the BRI. But China can't be left out entirely of the picture, with Piraeus perhaps giving it a route into the IMEC, even if that route isn't approved by the IMEC's participants. It's also worth noting that China has well-established links with many of the IMEC participants. For instance, trade between Saudi Arabia and China stood at $106 billion in 2022, which is around double the amount of trade between the US and Saudi Arabia. The same year saw trade between China and the United Arab Emirates go above $72 billion. Both countries are IMEC participants and may see the corridor as a way to reduce reliance on China. Still, you could argue that the IMEC is a little too late for them, India, and Israel, given Chinese influence over Asian trade. Still, even too little too late is reason enough for India to increase its cooperation with Israel. By purchasing Israeli businesses, especially Hiap Port, India can at least increase its influence over IMEC. And in doing so, it might be able to start slowly chipping away at China's commercial dominance on the Asian continent. And that desire to chip away at China is ultimately what lies at the heart of India buying so many Israeli businesses. Those purchases encourage and enhance collaboration between the two nations at a time when Middle Eastern politics are in turmoil and China is tightening its grip. They also provide a route away from allowing Beijing to control the flow of trade to India. All of the Israeli businesses mentioned in this video provide something to India that might otherwise have come from China. What we're seeing here is a trade-based power struggle, with both India and Israel doing what they can to maintain themselves as established leaders in Asia and beyond. Still, India is playing catch-up. It's been somewhat complacent in its approach to China's rising economic power, so it's likely that strategies like IMEC and increasing collaboration with Israel are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what India will try to do and ensure its voice remains heard. But what do you think? Are we reading too much into these Israeli business purchases, or do you believe they're a sign of increasing Indian and Israeli collaboration? What do you make of Israel seemingly backing away from Palestine at such a crucial moment in history? Tell us your opinions in the comments section. Now watch what would happen if China and the US went to war hour by hour, or check out this video instead.